When we think of archetypes in the Fire Emblem community, there are very few that are more familiar than the Jagen. He's the pre-promoted guy at the start of the game that helps you train up your weaker units or help kill off the stronger ones that stand in your way. Today though, I'm here to talk about a very specific one, Marcus from the Binding Blade. If you want a more in-depth look at other Jagens throughout the series, please give Danny's video a watch. I'll have it down in the description. I'm here more so to gush about why Marcus and the Binding Blade is my favorite Jagen in the series, and explain why I think he's one of the best designed ones too. Before I go any further, I want to give a brief foundation for what I look for in a good Jagen. A Jagen is a unit with solid bases, high weapon ranks, and usually lower growths than the units they're starting with. Marcus fills this role masterfully. If he uses the Iron Sword, he leaves enemies at a low enough HP, so it only takes a single hit from units like Alan, Lance, or even Shannon to finish them off. While he's setting up all these kills, his bulk allows him to take several hits before needing to retreat for healing, meaning you can leave him on the front lines, then pick off the leftover enemies with your weaker scrubs. When you need a dangerous enemy deleted off the map, the Silver Lance is sure to make short work of them. And speaking of the Silver Lance, Marcus's A-rank lances means that he can use every generic lance at base. His D-swords lets him use iron and steel, with killing edges only being a single rank away. As for the E-axes though, it at least gives him full control of the weapon triangle, and access to some important weapons if you're willing to put in some work for them. Lastly, his growth rates are nothing spectacular at all, meaning you're incentivized to train growth units since they usually get more mileage out of good level ups. There's a good reason to feed Marcus levels and investment early on, but I will touch on that a little later. Now that I've shown why Marcus succeeds in his role, I want to give some examples of Jagens that I don't think work as well. Titania and especially Seth are far too strong. They one-round the early game enemies, and Seth even one-shots a couple of them, meaning they can't set up kills for your other units, and stay strong throughout most of, if not the entire game. Why should I bother training an early game unit when Seth will power through the whole thing, or I can mow through the early game with Titania and bonus experience up someone later? On the opposite end, Aaron and Jagen lack the bulk and speed that I look for in a unit like Marcus. FE11 Jagen on harder difficulties also fails at helping versus the early bosses. Some of this is early Shadow Dragon has some really weird stat inflation, but it'd be really helpful if Jagen could not get 2-hit KO'd by Gomer or not get one-rounded by Hyman in the harder difficulties. I still enjoy using the stronger Jagens like Seth and Titania and appreciate what Jagen brings to the table with his Silver Lance, but I do wish there were some changes made to these units to function more like Marcus. Outside of setting up kills for your earlier team, Marcus helps out tremendously in the early game with a few extra tasks. In Chapter 3, you receive the Halberd. If you tried using this on Lauder Wade, you'll know their accuracy is not desirable, and its weight can lead to them getting doubled on counter. If you train Marcus's axe rank to D by the start of Chapter 4, he becomes the best user of it by far. His accuracy is much more reliable and doesn't face such a harsh counter if he misses. One-shotting some Cavaliers gives Marcus some EXP as well, which is important in the short run. By level 5, Marcus can be expected to have gained his first point of speed. This speed level lets him double the dreaded Wyvern Riders in Chapter 7. If you continue to train his axe rank before then, he can use the Chapter 6 Killer Axe for extra hit and a chance to crit versus them. This almost feels like a reward for training him early on. You don't need to fear Marcus accidentally getting some kills here and there and taking EXP from your other units, since there is a short-term payoff to doing so. If you want to make some of these traits extra reliable, Marcus can support both Roy and Alan, the prior being force deployed in every map, and the latter being a very good target for investment. The reason I mention these two specifically is they both have the coveted fire affinity, granting attack, hit, avoid, and critical to their partners. This does take a while to build, but it could be worth doing so if you're willing to slow down and build some supports. While Marcus is my favorite Jagen and one of the best designed ones, he's not perfect. That point of speed that I mentioned, he would really appreciate getting it by Chapter 5, since otherwise he stops doubling a handful of fighters. And the D rank axes I mentioned for Chapter 4, it's something you have to be pretty deliberate to get. It takes 50 weapon experience to gain a rank in FE6, and he can't even start building it until halfway or near the end of Chapter 2 when he trades an axe off of Lauder Wade. These two aren't massive deals, since you have a lot of units by Chapter 5 that can help deal with enemies, and you can always swing away at the Chapter 3 boss if you're really desperate and want to get that D rank axes by the end. However, I did think it was only fair to point out these shortcomings, since I'm gushing about everything he's so good at. The last major point I want to touch on is Marcus's long-term performance. If we look at his growths, you'll see that they're not very good, with HP being the only one above 25%. He's helped you a lot early on, but the early game training projects are going to surpass him at some point. A 15-1 Allen compared to a level 8 Marcus has 4 strength, 1 speed, and 2 defense, while a similar Lance versus the same Marcus has 2 strength, 4 speed, and 1 defense over him. It's fair to say Marcus will still have a weapon rank lead over these two, but it's not too difficult to get both of them to see lances and swords by Chapter 13 where you can buy killer weapons. Chapter 13 also gives you Milady. A base Milady versus a 13 Marcus has 5 strength and defense over him and 1 speed. By this point, Marcus is still putting in some work, but it's clear his time as the number 1 unit has passed. Even less spectacular units like Deke and Lot are on par or surpassing him in some ways. A 15-1 Deke versus a level 8 Marcus has 4 strength, 2 speed, and 2 defense over him, while the same Lot has 3 strength, the same speed, and 2 defense, but also a massive 11 HP lead over him. These may all sound like bad things. Your Marcus has fallen behind your other units and is struggling to contend for a deployment slot. However, I think this is genius. Your reward for smartly using him to set up kills and not mow through the whole game with him is stronger long-term units. You can definitely keep using him throughout the entire mid-game, but it's to your greatest benefit to use him to build up your other investment targets, so they can carry you through to the end. After all of this, I think it's fair to say that Marcus is the most important unit in the game. I won't say best since that depends on how you quantify the best unit, but I do believe he's the most important. Other Titans he's commonly compared to, like Rucker, Milady, and Percival, fall short in important ways. Rucker lacks the bulk that Marcus has early on. They both have similar damage output if they both double and use iron weapons, and can kill scary enemies with Killing Edge and Silver Lance respectively. But Marcus has full weapon triangle control, 1-2 range, and more defense and HP. Even Rucker's main selling point of killing bosses is something Marcus can replicate fairly easily. Marcus will have C swords fairly early on due to all the axe enemies early on, and the Killing Edge lets him score some lucky crits versus the bosses that are giving you trouble. Milady and Percival far exceed Marcus' stats when they join, but Marcus helps you at the hardest and least reliable part of the game, chapters 4 through 8. While Marcus is swinging a halberd in chapter 4 and poking wyverns with a silver lance in chapter 7, Milady and Percival are sitting in their respective chapters waiting to be recruited. I do still love all of these units and enjoy cutting through armies with them, but I can't easily forget just how much Marcus carried to get me here. In case you couldn't tell, I really like this unit. Every time I start at Binding Blade, I'm excited to use this old man again. His ease of setting up kills and ability to carry you through the difficult sections just make him a fun unit to use. If you haven't tried these short-term gains of using him and training him to level 5, I highly recommend it. And hey, nothing's stopping you from taking this guy all the way to the whole game. I took him to chapter 21 once in a run and had him swinging arm mats at the Wyvern Onslaught. He was far behind my other growth units at this point, but hey, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching. Before I go, I want to give a huge thank you to my friend Dawn for making the thumbnail. I think she did an amazing job with it, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. What are your thoughts on Marcus? Wish he was a little stronger, maybe wish he had better growth rates, or maybe you have a different Jagen in this series that you really like for one reason or another. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed yourself, and subscribe to see more Fire Emblem content. Until the next one, see ya!